Ready to find your flow? AFSA's got you covered.
That's right. The hands-on training lab in Richardson, Texas is where you trade PowerPoints for pipe wrenches. Real tools, real systems, and real experience you can actually use.
And if you're ready to test your skills, check out the hands-on NFPA 25 workshops, where you'll inspect, test, and maintain live sprinkler systems and fire pumps. No simulations, no fluff, just pressure, flow, and know-how.
It's the perfect way to get under pressure without cracking under it.
So get fired up and register today at firesprinkler.org. Spots fill faster than a charged branch line.
AFSA, where you don't just learn the code, you live it. Welcome to the K Factor podcast, where we turn up the heat on all things fire protection. Brought to you by the American Fire Sprinkler Association, this podcast sparks conversations about the latest technology, trends, and tools shaping the industry. Join the AFSA tech team as we fan the flames of innovation in fire safety.
Welcome to another. Oh my goodness, I messed that up.
But you have to leave it in. You have to just go with it.
All right. You know what? We're still getting used to this, but welcome to another episode of the K Factor podcast, AFSA's Tech Talk. We are here with Chris Campion Jr. It is always great to talk to you. I'm looking forward to this.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm in Dallas. You got the podcast going on. It's fun. This is awesome.
Yeah.
What a great setup.
So, start of 2025. What's new in your world?
It's cold in Dallas. I came out here because it's cold in New York. I thought it'd be warmer out here in Dallas. What happened?
Well, precipitation's a little bit less.
Going to start snowing. Right? Does it ever snow? It doesn't snow down here, does it? No.
Rarely.
You ever see that? Okay.
I mean, it was
Tuesday.
a couple of weeks ago, right? Or a week ago.
Well, we shut down about a couple.
Really? I never
Think
imagined snow out here. My wife didn't believe me when I told her it was cold in Dallas. She said, it's Texas. It's warm. Like, apparently not.
Eighth of an inch of snow, I think we got. And
how'd you manage? Did they cancel school that day?
they did. They did. We were working remote.
They cancel school
we shut down the office for 2 days.
Fair
when
enough.
we get snow in the forecast, they start shutting things down. We just don't have the infrastructure to deal with it.
Fair enough. All right, I got it.
Yeah.
So do you deal with sprinkler freezing down here? Like, are dry systems
For
a thing
sure.
down here?
It's not dry systems aren't a thing, and I think that's what the issue was. And Eric, you could probably talk to this a little more because you were here during the big freeze.
Right.
I've been here 3 years, and it's been frozen for a week every time I've been here. But the year that they shut down, was it a grid issue?
Yeah. So a few years back, we had the major snowpocalypse that came through, and the thing about Texas is for a while they were bragging because we've got our own grid. So most of the country is either on the east grid or the west grid, and then Texas is kind of on its own. But when we had that major freeze come in, we couldn't pull power from areas that weren't affected. And we had a bunch of power stations that went down. We had a lot of power lines that went down. So ERCOT, which is our managing body for the electrical grid, was telling people that they had to start basically doing rolling blackouts to try to prevent the entire grid failure, which was interesting to watch. Just as it kind of unfolded, it was rather unfortunate though, because everybody was so affected. But it's made some changes. They've made some law changes to make them do a little bit more winterization on the power plants, and it sounds like we're moving towards starting to connect more to the grid. I think the only place in Texas that really wasn't affected was El Paso, and I think it's because they can tie into the other parts of the grid.
Has that changed your historical construction? So I'm from the Northeast. Cold is just a way of life up there. Dry systems, antifreeze, all the best parts of the Bible, as it were. So you don't typically have that down here. I mean, is this like when I visit Florida and I see outside backflows? Is that something you experience in Texas, or is this a whole different?
No, we're not. Well, I mean, maybe parts of really southern Texas, but no, it's not to the point where you're like at Disney and you're walking around and it's like you got that intermixing of there's a outside wet system, but they've got dry hydrants, and they've also got wet hydrants, a little bit of everything, right?
Well, the concrete
Down
bridges.
So how would you manage, like, for a parking garage in an environment like this where you can have extended cold spells? Is that typical wet?
Cold enough, long enough that we are still getting some of the dry systems. It's just not as pervasive as it is up in the north.
So you just put in wet systems and give the guy some cherry overtime?
Well, the bigger issue is not so much that we don't have the systems. They're still putting the dry systems in. I think a lot more of it is that we don't get on top of the maintenance side of it as quickly as they do up in the Northeast. So, when we're teaching the ITM classes, it's kind of interesting because we'll start talking about, go drain your drum drips down, start getting those systems ready for winter. And that for, in the north, that's probably, September at the latest conversation. Here we're starting to consider that, I don't know,
the week
November,
before it freezes.
December.
I mean,
it's the week before it freezes, right? And then all of our contractors down here getting slammed with the request of, hey, I need you to come out and get my system ready. The weather's going to be cold next week. And it's like, okay, we don't have the...
Yeah, the requests are winterization of my dry system. That's what I've heard when I talk to the contractors here, which I'm like, what do you do to winterize it? They're basically just drain and drum drips.
So it's interesting. So we were talking about the work that I do, and I work at airports, and Kennedy is a big one that I work at. And obviously, when you're working at a major airport terminal, any kind of freeze of a sprinkler system, major impact to operations. We're talking a lot of money. If you're delaying flights, it's huge. So there's a lot of pressure working in that environment. So we have a very rigid winterization plan for the dry systems. It involves renting high volume compressors to get high velocity air to blast everything out of the dry systems. They open up the end, connect the compressor. We had drum drips get hit. As soon as we start getting below freezing, they're hitting them pretty much every day just to crack out whatever they can before to try and be ready for the system. So it's... We hope by now the things that have frozen would freeze. I mean, I run one of the terminals for American Airlines up there in addition to their hangars that I do throughout the country. And the terminal that I'm in has been open 20 years, and they've had some freeze-ups. But when I first got involved there about 2.5 years ago, we went through and we looked at their history, and that's the definition of crazy, do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So they would tell me all the areas that when it gets cold, that area freezes. Like, how many times is it freezing? Well, pretty much every year for like... Come on, guys. So now we've heat traced. We went and put a bunch of low temperature sensors in. We dealt with some of the issues, and I'm going to knock on your fake wood here and hope that we have another good winter. But the last couple, we've been very lucky up there, and we've seen a lot of things happen in other terminals, and I'm just like, thank goodness it's not mine.
I mean, that kind of reminds me of the apartment complex I lived at in college. There, it was small town Oklahoma, and they decided that the way they were going to heat their riser rooms with livestock heat lamps, which inevitably would burn out.
Oh,
so
it's an
every
Aggie
single year, we'd have freeze up issues, and then, they would send those of us in the fire protection group out on a, fire watch through the fire marshal's office, which was cool. It was a fun experience for the people that got to do that. But at the same time, it was like every single year we're doing the same apartment complex. It might be a different building, but it's the same complex with the same issue. It's like you'd think they would.
That fire watch was good pay, so don't.
That's right. That's good money right there. I don't begrudge anybody. Was it saying that the fire service is 100 years of tradition unimpeded by progress? We like doing the same thing over and over again. It's. I guess there's safety in what you've done before. I don't know what comes next. Kind of scary, but if I do what I've always done, it's gotten me here. So let's just keep spinning the wheels.
So I'd like to hope that they've upgraded their heating system, but I mean, I'm not confident.
Too funny.
So what makes you, or what even got you into work in airports? That's a big hazard with a lot of different building types, a lot of different years of buildings.
So that's a great question. So when I started in the business, I was just out of high school at 96. I started going to Seton Hall for about a year and a half. I was going to go to law school. I was going to be a lawyer. It was the whole thing, and it just wasn't for me. I learned that I'm not one for studying and learning on theory and reading books. Like, I'm hands-on. You give me something, I want to take it apart, see how it works inside, and put it back together. So one day I'm sitting down the firehouse, and one of the kids who was there was like, hey, do you know anything about fire alarms? I'm like, I know they go off, and we respond to them like, what? Well, my dad's looking for an inspector. So I started as an alarm guy.
And first Sparky on the podcast. Watch out.
I don't think I have any burn marks. Like, look, I actually have real wounds on my hands. I have burn marks. I have scratches from pipe. I've actually worked for a living. But I learned that, and I learned the technology. And one of the things you start to realize if you work in this industry enough is none of these systems work on isolation island, right? When we build solutions for a building, we're not just building a sprinkler system or an alarm system. We don't just put fire doors in. Like, none of those work by themselves. They're all interdependent. When you put sprinklers on the ceiling, that's relying on that upper barrier to maintain the heat so the sprinkler can go off. We do a lot. So as I moved through the industry, I started with alarms. I got very good at that. I got interested in special hazard stuff. I started working around a lot of gas things and all that. And then I started to realize that, hey, pipe's the same stuff the sprinklers are in. I started working a little more on that. And then I got to I think it was about 2010 or so, that I started to realize that in our line of work, there's some really good engineers. And there's a lot of people who have a seal that I'm really wondering how they get dressed in the morning.
For sure.
So I have found a lot of times being a field guy coming up from the other end that there was value in people who were technicians that had built systems. So I started taking online classes at EKU. So I graduated with that degree in 2016, and my first test I took was the fundamentals of engineering, which, as you remember from experience,
so much fun.
Probably one of the scariest tests on the planet for someone who actually works for a living. But I squeaked through that, and then I went back and took the NC's exam for fire protection engineering, and I got registered in New Jersey. Now I'm registered in about 12 states, and I started just getting more involved with different systems, and I started becoming kind of the guy that people went to for very advanced technical stuff. The things that
drones. You said Jersey.
Drones, yeah. That magically disappeared when the political topics of the day changed. I don't know what happened, but it's like look at the silly shiny thing. Look over here. You didn't see that anymore. It's okay. I love where that went on. Just to derail quick, but the drones were going on. Like I'm in front of my house, and we haven't spoken about that. I'm mayor in my town, so I'm involved in a lot of political things. So when that was going on, we're getting these bulletins out, and we're having calls, and it's like, they don't know what they are, but there's certain things that were said on some of these calls about. The one that got me was that there were intrusions into local military bases, and their drone alert system didn't detect it. They were just spotted by people and reporting it. Like, wow, I like to think we have like the most advanced military in the world, and we can pick this stuff up. But then we're on calls and no one knows anything about it. And then the White House comes out and they're like, they're not drones. People are just misidentifying planes. I'm like, wait a minute now. I'm not a conspiracy guy, but if you keep talking like this, you may push me over that. I may have to get the aluminum foil out and start making hats because I've seen them. I've been on the calls. Like, let's not try and gaslight that they don't exist. But
being from Rhode Island, it was hard for me not to say, well, it's Jersey, so of course something's going on.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. Who knows? Maybe something ended up in the water and we all had it. I suppose it's possible, but I don't know. It's just a weird situation. But to go back on the story, so when I got my engineering stuff and I started getting involved in fixing some very complicated things, I hooked up with a couple people and I started getting involved with some real challenges, and that's how I fell in with some of the airlines. They've got a lot of older hangars, a lot of older systems, and it really takes specialists to work on them. So generally, when someone told them systems couldn't be fixed and it's time for multi-million-dollar upgrades, I went and for a few $1,000s, we got systems back up and working. And
awesome.
A lot of even their maintenance hangars. I mean, if you look at what's involved with it, and I'd love to start talking about foam and where things are going on that's an important conversation for me too. But you've got these 777s that are worth, tens of millions of dollars sitting in these hangars. And if they can't fix planes don't make money sitting on the ground, right? So when they've got stacks of planes and fire systems out of service in hangars and they can't repair planes, it's a big deal. So I like that pressure of an environment because I find I don't have to, listen, I don't want to disparage anybody who's listening, but if this offends you, I'm sure, I hope that the majority of people listening will understand what I'm saying. There's a lot of bottom feeders in our business. There's a lot of people who drive the bottom down, don't take pride in their work, don't have the discipline to do things right. And unfortunately, I think it impacts most of us in a very negative light. And I'm happy for things like this, where there's proactive communications and the people who are motivated and who are passionate about what we do get out and talk about it. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff out there. I'm trying to remember the name of the fellow who does the podcast that does an awesome job, and I love watching his stuff. Bobby and
Bobby and Brian.
Oh, they're awesome.
Tape,
they're awesome. Just
and
they
Chris
bring
Logan with the Fire Sprinkler podcast.
It's so well produced. It's so it's just an incredible. But we need more of that. We talk about getting the next generation in and getting more people involved, and this medium and social media and communications are probably the best way to get out there and reach some of the people. But gotta make interesting content. Which, why do you have me on again?
I guess to your bottom feeder, bottom dwelling statement is in starting getting into the association side of life. Less than 10% of our contractors out there, or contractors in general, are part of a professional association, which just is mind-blowing for what they've done for my career.
Can you imagine that?
That's crazy.
Can you imagine it's like owning a house and not having homeowners insurance? Like, what are you thinking? Why would you do... And there's a good portion of ignorance out there. I mean, a lot of us come into this business and there's very limited structures to get into the fire sprinkler world, the fire protection world in general, right? If you come into this world through an education path, you end up at University of Maryland or OKU or EK, one of those type of universities that have fire programs that you go to, but usually you're going into it because you have a predisposition to that.
Right.
You're somewhere involved in a volunteer fire service. You know someone. You're 1 degree away from the business. It's not like any of these other businesses where you go to school and you're doing general mechanical engineering and suddenly you realize you like the idea of, different types of systems. So you go into that path and you learn that in school. So there's a big void in this industry of getting the next generation on and bringing more people in. And I think a lot of that translates to, once you're in the business, where do you go? How do you find these associations and know to get involved? I mean, I talk to fire officials where I'm like, why are you not a member of AFSA? And they're like, well, why would I be? They're a contracts group. I'm like, no, they're not. Like, you're calling me asking code questions. They've got way smarter people than I am. I mean, call and talk to Vicky about what you're asking. You want to know about seismic? There is nobody on this planet that is as smart as that woman when it comes to seismic stuff. Sure. Like, don't guess. You have access. And do we still do free AHJ memberships, right? Or it's like significantly reduced. Yeah. Like, why would you not take advantage of that and have a phone call of resources? But I wish I knew what the answer was. Yeah. Why do so few people commit to developing the industry that, pays their bills and feeds their kids? Someone figures that one out. I'm stunned by it.
And challenge yourself and always learn too. I think that's what people don't. Once you get one book, they're like, okay, this is what I'm doing.
And I've never found anybody in this world. Let me say this again. I've never found anybody who's been here for any appreciable amount of time. I see people who dabble, but most people who enter this world are here for a career. This is not a job. You don't have to stop here to figure out where you want to go. You end up here and you usually get bit by the bug, and you're very passionate about what you're doing and what you're working on. I mean, you see most fitters out there, when bad stuff happens, they'll jump in that pit and they will stay there fixing that pipe until the water's back on. They will not take breaks. They will work through lunch. They will get that job done and go home. And I think that there's something about that builds this camaraderie in this business, that when you meet people that have a similar work ethic and share that passion. That's why we're out here, right? We're here for the TAC committee. I can walk in that room and talk to anyone and strike up a conversation just like this, because we're kind of cut from very similar cloth. And I wish the other 90% of people who don't get involved in the association would realize how cool this world can be if you reach out just a little bit.
And how strong we could be.
Yeah, listen, we get steamrolled by a lot of other industries. You watch, I've been involved with testifying before committees about fire sprinklers. I was very involved in New Jersey with the townhouse bill, and I went out to Trenton to testify, and it's gutting when that stuff gets knocked down, because the builders group have their stuff together. Their contractors are in there, and they have the money, and they come out and they throw out these wild, just when you come from the fire side and you see these builders coming out saying, well, we put fire sprinklers in homes, they'll be too expensive, and people will be living on the street. Really? Did you say that when you were selling them the Corian countertops and the paver driveways and all these ornate kitchen appliances? Like, come on. You never offers an option. And unfortunately, when you're up against something like that and you don't have your team together and strong, it's hard to put a fight up. So listen, we can get that number to 25, 30% and have more vocal voices out there pushing. What do? We save lives and property. Like, this is the coolest job ever. This is a job, a career. It's fun. We meet great people. Fortunately, my career has taken me to amazing places, from airports like we were talking about to military bases all over the world. You see some really cool stuff in our industry that you wouldn't see being a painter or something else. And it's a ton of fun.
So I know we're a sprinkler industry, but we love fire protection. You brought up a conversation more on the special hazard side. What about foam? What's your status in your opinion? What's the issue?
I love that everybody in this room is younger and we're like the next generation, because there's a lot of just old school guys that there was a period like the 70s and 80s where every hangar got foam. And it just was the way it was. Now, I mean, you're a lot like me. We ask why, right? Our generation was brought up to question stuff and ask questions. And I'd get answers about, well, fuel on the ground and there's fuel in the plane. I'm like, all right, why doesn't every parking garage in the country with hundreds of vehicles and 30 gallons of fuel have foam in it? Why airplanes? Like, why? And a lot of it comes down to, back then, things were very different of how the airline industry functioned. Just like the fire service or any other industry that's relatively young. I mean, commercial aviation as a service is still pretty young as far as, major industries go. And we would put foam in places because it wasn't uncommon for the fear of foam to come out to be extrapolated to, okay, we have this minor incident. We're taking a fuel pump out, fuel spilled out. We had 100 gallons hit the ground. What if we didn't stop it and it got worse? So now in current hangars, when you look at their operating procedures, most insurance companies don't want to see fueled planes in a hangar. Too much risk. Most big insurance companies are not insuring for the aircraft. They're insuring continuity of operations, which is way more expensive than a plane.
Business interruptions.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the biggest focus from some of the big providers out there. Their job is to replace the building and pay for business interruptions. Buildings, not that they're cheap, but they're relatively cheap to throw up a hangar in this day and age. I mean, it's not that expensive to build a hangar. Terminals obviously very expensive, but if I lose a hangar on a major route for a major airline and I've got dozens of planes that are now sitting there because I can't fix that and that bill's tallying up, that's huge. And I assume you're familiar with the foam study the Fire Research Foundation did. So if you read through that and you look at the data, there's some just startling numbers in there that should be eye-opening on our history with fires and hangars. And the reality is, it just doesn't happen. Foam in hangars is there to protect fuel at an appreciable depth, so in-depth fuel fires, from running out of control and burning fuel. Well, between the multiple wall fuel tanks that exist and the way the cells are built, the processes all the airlines have, I mean, working in a hangar and seeing what they go through to go and do basic services, there are full flow checklists and checks upon checks, and each part number that's ordered is earmarked for equipment and serialized in their stores, and it gets tracked, and just what they go through in those arenas, we're just not at the risk that we had been. So if you're familiar with the new 409 standard, there's a whole section in there that talks about that talks about doing the risk assessment and really going through and saying, look, it's going to be case by case. If you were in a hangar, yeah, exactly. If you're in a hangar and you know you're doing high risk things in there and there's a risk of fuel, absolutely. You have to put some measure in, whether we're going with foam, whether we're going with high X, whether you're going with a synthetic, if you're doing safe spill on the floor, whatever it might be, you're going to be putting something in because the risk is there. But the mindset needs to be we quantify a problem and define a solution. And I think when you look at foam and you look at where the industry is, I mentioned before, 100 years of tradition, unimpeded by progress. You're trying to change the way it's always been to what it should be.
Right.
And when you look at a hangar and you look at protecting some of these modern hangars and where they are, and back to the report that was there with the damage, there are billions upon billions of dollars of damage and impacts to operations from erroneous discharge of foam. The cost of maintenance is through the roof. The agents tend to be corrosive, so pipe gets eaten away. They work, but it's very expensive to maintain, very expensive to keep up. And then when you have an activation, it's a major problem. And you're also limiting the ability to service it because now you're in a very specialized arena. So if you can zoom out from that and say, what is the problem that we're trying to protect? And you can go to high volume deluge at the ceiling. You can go to manual operations, increased detection, better training, better processes, and
sprinklers.
Take that. I said high volume deluge and sprinklers. You have to clarify for the 90% that aren't in the association don't know what deluge is. But
of course.
I mean, look, what's the most effective firefighting agent on the planet? Water. Why? Because it works. Yeah. Water works on fires. And even in these arenas, when you talk about foam, there will always be a market for foam. There will always be it's a tool in a toolbox. And we were just in the tax meeting, the Technical Advisory Council, for those listening who don't know, going over the different submissions and comments and opinions that we have on different aspects of standards as they relate to our industry. And some of the conversations just get exhausting because there is a certain bit out there of people who have forgotten how to think. We need everything in an instruction manual. We need it in a book because we have totally forgotten why we do what we do.
I'm not going to pick on it, but it does come up at almost every committee meeting that we've been in. Accessible.
Oh,
that's
that was
one
great.
of those exhausting.
I actually rolled my eyes on that one. I was like, well, I mean, think about accessible. What's accessible to us and what's accessible to Bob? He's like 3 feet shorter.
Right.
Like, what's accessible to the 4 of us in the room might not be accessible to Mr. Caputo. It's just but it's
going to be logical. You got to logically think through the meaning.
And there's a lot of common sense that needs to be brought into the things that we do. I mean, you look at our spacing of sprinkler heads, right? 7.5 feet between off the wall, 15 feet between heads. Just basic rules that we all know off the top of our head. Do you really think 7 foot 7 inches is going to make the head ineffective?
Right.
Just, if you go 15 foot 3 inches between heads, you're really making. Are we that precise as an industry? Just common sense. I'm not saying it's good to deviate and go away from the standards, but we've talked for years now about the design density tables. And you often ask people, like, do you know the origin? We know it's always worked, but the reality is that was pipe schedule design that was horseshoed into math, and we've worked with the curves because they've worked. It works, but are there better ways to do things when you think about it? Possibly. Is there a risk when you go away that we go swing the pendulum the other way now, and we get closer to that line, and we lose it? Sure. But we need to be able to understand our business and what we're here to do. I mean, right? Pipe's pipe. Our end game is water on the fire, fire go out, right? Or contain the fire. Yeah. But it's a fun business. I love the stuff we do every day. I love the people I meet. I love that we can just be standing in a hall after a session and be like, hey, you want to go do a podcast? Sure. I thought we were going to talk. Let's go talk.
So what are some similarities and differences between maybe the alarm community and the sprinkler community?
I think one of the biggest divergence that I've seen is personalities.
Okay.
And it's different to work on an alarm system by itself, because the worst thing that happens is I set off an alarm and I annoy a few people and I silence it. The worst that happens in the sprinkler world is I do something that floods an area and I can't just press reset and make that go away. So there's a very different degree in confidence of people who will work on stuff. Like, I find that sprinkler guys tend to be a lot more methodical in planning things through and being ready for what they're jumping in for. An alarm guy will just head first dive off the cliff and figure it out, which, I mean, listen, I know that from experience of having to go and clean up after him. A lot of my job when I have to go fix complex problems is a day or two of trying to unweave what someone else tried to do to fix to get to the underlying issue. But I do find that sprinkler guys tend to notice more, any suppression side, but a lot of sprinkler guys really respect the fire aspect of the things they're doing. A lot of alarm guys, I find, not a lot, but there's a good group of alarm guys that come from like a security hybrid background. So I have found over my career, I started in the 90s, so I don't even know how old I am now. When am I pushing 30 years in the business now, or 25? Can you believe that? It's 2025. Sorry, I'm going to silence
crazy.
moment for all the people listening to this that just felt really depressed. But, I mean, I told someone I was born in the 1900s, and they're like, you know, I said the year I was born, like, you were born in the 1900s? I'm like, wow. Yeah. Like, my brain still thinks like 1920s and like old.
Horse and buggy.
Gosh, yeah. But there is a difference in personalities of when you're working on the different systems, and if you're a sprinkler guy and you're really getting into that, like you're very... It's a mechanical mind versus a theoretical mind is what I have found. To be a good alarm guy, you need to be able to mentally visualize the things you're working on. You need to understand concept. Sprinkler guys tend to be very hands-on. Yeah. They can get into pumps. They can get into valves. They understand the mechanics of what they're looking at. And you find in this path is if you go into, say, an alarm guy, either you get to a point where you're good and you start moving into certain aspects of suppression that overlays, or you're a security guy who does fire. So it tends to be like a little bit of suppression, and maybe they pretend they're a sprinkler guy, because I will admit, I thought I knew enough about, so I've learned I'm just enough to be dangerous. I know what the codes say, know what it should look like, I know how to inspect it, I understand the way things are. But look, you put me in front of a threading machine and it's not going to end well for me or the machine. I'm just going to be honest out there. I mean, I have a ton of respect for the guys who do it. I tell a lot of sprinkler guys, you know, my alarm days back there, they work harder in a day than I'd work in a month. Yeah. I tip my hat to any of the guys out there slinging pipe, doing what they do. I mean, there are some hard-charging people in this industry. I mean, I'd buy a drink for any of them. Like, I have a ton of respect for the guys who work in the field. It's not easy work, and the guys who take pride in their work out there and do it right every day. This is, like, as we said before, this is a job where you're making a huge difference. Yeah. You're protecting lives and property, and it's proven. I mean, I don't know if you guys have experienced it, but you get a call of a building you take care of, and someone says, "Did you hear there was a fire at the building?" My first response is, "Did the system go off?" And if you hear yes, you're like, yes. Like, it's a great feeling. I mean, we had at the terminal I take care of up at Kennedy, they had an escalator fire over the summer. Everything did what it was supposed to.
That's why those things are always down.
Oh, it was beautiful. It was, yeah, that's right. Yeah. But it's when the systems work, it's a great feeling, and that's where it's hard in our business to try and explain to people why it works. And I do prevention too. I have a small town by me where I do subcode enforcement for under the fire code in New Jersey, and it's hard to justify to municipalities and to people who have to fund money to those bureaus how what we do works. I mean, if you look at situations and you look at what's happened in California and the experience they're going through right now, and a lot of that based on the anecdotal things that are out there were those little tiny deviations from what they had learned in the 70s. I mean, California in the 70s went through some bad stuff with wildfire, and they reacted where they basically wrote the book on wildland urban interface fire management. They had the forestry management down. Incident command system, everything we work on was built off Cal Fire and what they put together to resolve communication issues. So you see the devastation that happens now, and everybody's so quick with our politically charged, divided environment to start pointing fingers, but it's not that simple.
No, it's a deep, complex issue.
And it's also in that deviation cycle where you just move a little bit off normal, and that becomes the new normal, and you inch away, and here we are 50 years later repeating situations that happened in the 60s. Now, granted, they weren't as densely populated. It wasn't as impactful as it is now as far as it's tragic and awful, but what's happened now is terrible, and I really hope it opens eyes to prevention works.
Right.
That pre-planning, the active backburns, the vegetation management. That's done for a reason. It's not just because people want to kill trees and burns. It's because we understand our world is science. I mean,
you've got to account for that fire service response, which I think a lot of times when we're developing, I mean, Dallas for sure, not saying that they're missing anything, but we've got a really good fire marshal. We actually talked through that. They build up so quickly, and sometimes fire response or emergency response isn't necessarily considered and taken into effect.
Yeah, and that's the truth too. And it's to go back to where I started to go and down the road on there is when our job is successful, people wonder why they need us there.
Right.
Because nothing happens, so why do I need you here? I've never had a fire. I've never needed my system. Why do you have to do quarterlies? Why are we doing this every year and paying for this? And it's hard to say, you don't understand. It only takes one and you're bankrupt and it's over. And God forbid someone gets hurt or killed. You know, these systems work. We don't require them because it spurs an industry and it gives us all jobs. Don't get me wrong. It's a nice side effect of having a job that's meaningful. But the reality is we put these systems in because they work. And time and again, they're effective. And we were talking before about getting the message out and communicating. We do a really poor job about communicating sprinkler saves when they work. That's not as fascinating as when they don't work and the building burns to the ground and you've got great video. Who wants to see a single room burnout? And then to add to that, when it does get reported, what does the media focus on? All the water damage from the horrible sprinkler system. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry the building didn't burn to the ground and a dozen people didn't die. My apologies for the water on the ground. Like I just never understood that mindset.
Right, but they also don't report on how much water the fire department would have used when they showed up with a bigger fire and opened
the bigger water
giant lines in there. And yeah, so it's like, yeah, there was some damage. Sure, the water damage is an issue, and I think that's kind of one of the big things that we kind of chase on the sprinkler side is kind of just a whole is there's always that water damage concern, which is valid. ITM stuff, we're always preaching, know where your water goes. It happens, but I'd rather the water damage than the, hey, we burnt a bunch of buildings down because we didn't.
Right. Yeah. It's hard for this business to go out and because we see what we do as so fundamentally good that we know that what we do makes a difference. How do you convey that to people who watch movies and think one head goes off and the whole building floods? Like, it's hard to explain our world because it's so simple for us. And that's why I mentioned I love what Bobby and Brian do. I think it's great. I mean, their audience is building. It's fantastic. I love that you're doing this. I love the outreach of the events that are there. I mean, look, I look at even this association from when I first joined, however long ago, to where we are now. I mean, the last 10 years, the growth is phenomenal. The attendance at each event is incredible. The convention is just, I mean, if you're listening to this and you're not signed up for the convention in D.C., you're missing out on just something amazing. The networking opportunities, the sessions, the activities and the events and the camaraderie and
competition.
The apprentice competition is amazing. Oh my goodness. It's when we do it in Vegas, we should be able to gamble on it. I'm just saying, just throw that out there. Just
then there'll be NIL deals, and then I don't know.
Josh and I were joking that we should throw one of the staff members out there just so people can have put Bob or John or one of us out there just to give they know what they're doing, but just kind of give that they're really on another level, because it would be entertaining.
Yeah, and apprenticeship would kill the apprentices would kill us in competition.
Absolutely.
Well, serious sidebar here. They were ready to bet on themselves last year.
Oh, they were?
Like, they were all cut that back? I was like, I know I said, be competitive, kill each other, but maybe this is not the place or the time right now.
That's fun. Well, the funny thing is you mentioned putting Bob out there. I hate to say it, most of these kids probably wouldn't really respect that what he is as the legacy because they're younger people, but I love that apprentice competition. I love seeing the younger kids out there slinging pipe and just banging through those projects. It's really cool stuff. And one of my favorite things, especially at the conference, and I don't understand why more people don't go to conventions, as you mentioned before about being involved in associations, but just walking the trade floor and seeing the solutions that manufacturers have to problems that I haven't seen yet. Yeah. To sit down at a lunch table with a random group of people, find out where people are, and start learning about experiences in other areas of the country that might not have hit me yet. I've had plenty of times that I've walked through and I've seen one of the manufacturers have something and I'm like, that's really cool, take a picture. Not 3 months later, I run into a problem. I'm like, wait, I saw, and you have a solution to a problem. It makes you a better fitter. It makes you a better company to be aware of what everybody's working on in the industry. I don't understand why more people don't go to the conferences.
Well, and tying in what you were talking about with the apprentice competition and also the camaraderie within this industry, just even taking time to do a lap around, the people spectating and just listening to the sidebar conversations that are happening about whatever they're doing, whether it's, somebody I was walking the floor and they were talking about, oh, why aren't the apprentices doing XYZ? It's a good tip to get your pipe level, or they're talking a sidebar conversation on how they could be doing something more efficiently. And, that was just really interesting to hear those people sharing tips and tricks just amongst themselves on, hey, this is something that I've done or something that I've seen, or it was, what is that? We don't have that in our region region of the country. So
CEUs do one certification process and realize convention is...
And that's a big part, too, that if you're Florida licensed, they're registered with Florida. If there's a lot of jurisdictions that accept the AFSA training things. I mean, Florida, I have to do an online renewal for some of the license I have, and it's hysterical to watch the videos be some of our sections.
Cal Fire, same thing. Got plenty of approvals there. It's I do want to touch on something that I don't think many people pay attention to, and since you typically work in your more challenging, lot of different things going on at these job sites, is integrated testing. Is that something you deal with, and how important is it? So
I'm a huge driver in that up in my region for jobs that I'm involved with, because being an engineer and being in that, I can actually explain to people how it helps them. I've seen a lot of times where consulting engineers that design systems come and go, oh, no, we're doing the integrated testing. It's like, wait, pump the brakes. If you do it right, it's supposed to be a true third party that's doing true integrated testing. And I've seen it more. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey has gotten very good at requiring written test plans, going through and vetting it, having pre-meetings before they go to test. They've gotten a lot of new terminal construction going on, a ton of work. They've been great with, we're not going to come out until we've seen your test plan and we understand who the players are. And a big part of that is, okay, we know we're going to test smoke purge. That means we know we're going to need the alarm company there. We know we're going to need the people responsible for the fans there who can verify motors. We know we're going to need the vendor on the BMS to watch. And they bring in the different vendors to see the system work and verify, okay, we're doing this flow switch in this stair. Open the valve. Yes, the pump kicks on. We got the water flow switches this time. They call out, they got this. Okay, my dampers are closing. If needed, the elevator's recall. And everybody's doing that. So we're truly testing the system. Honestly, I've been in the business for almost 3 decades now. I don't understand how we allowed each system to be tested on their own. It's insane. And I find in a lot of buildings, I had one building where they had finished years ago, and they had wet standpipes in the building. And when they did work in a big addition, they added a whole bunch of hose cabinets. So they were going through testing, and we were just putting a gauge on and open the valve. We couldn't flow them, obviously. We're in the middle of a very active, and we got to a whole area where we're not getting water. Yeah. So they start following the pipe, and their test rig was still on the end from when they hydro tested at the end of construction. It was never tied into where it was supposed to be tied into. And it had been that way for 2.5 years. We do fail a lot in testing. There's a lot of mistakes that happen. And listen, I know you're on your path to getting your engineering, which is amazing. Are you signed up for the NCs?
Yeah, for April 30.
Let's go. You're going to get it. That one's going to be way easier than the other. But when you get licensed in certain states, it says fire protection. So my Arizona, my California, my Florida, it says fire protection. My Texas says fire protection. You get to the Northeast and it says professional engineer, and I pinky promise I'll only work in areas that I feel competent. What's that old saying? You don't know what you don't know?
For sure.
I mean, I don't understand it. You're a mechanical engineer, right? You understand basic thermodynamics. You understand, fluid hydraulics, you understand that type of stuff. That's awesome. What do you know about what happens in a compartment when heat gets released and how it moves and how the sprinkler is going to react and delivering to multiple zones over and like, it's a very different world. Same for an electrical engineer. And maybe it was because I went and studied for the engineering test that I looked at the electrical to see what they get. So an electrical guy can sign off on a complex smoke control system, fire alarm, sprinkler monitoring, suppression. And his license exam only included 3 to 5 questions on fire alarm. Mm-hmm. He can get everyone wrong and still get that I'm a magic PE stamping those drawings. So all you fitters out there that curse those engineers that are out there and you're redoing their work, there's the underlying problem. I don't believe you should be able to be an engineer until you spent 2 years in a job trailer, or your first couple designs, you're forced to be out there with the foreman so he can slap you with a pipe wrench every time he's got to fix your stuff.
That's early into my career too. Existing building, we're out there for fire pump test, annual fire pump test. We kill power to the fire pump. And the emergency generator is supposed to kick in. It took us 6 or 7 minutes to even realize that we had killed the fire pump and nothing happened. And how many PE stamps were prior to that?
I did a smoke control in a mall where we were dropping smoke bombs, and no one had ever live tested it. They tested it by zone, and we were doing retesting for whatever reason it was, and we were setting off smoke in this giant mall. And it went, and all the fans turned on, and the whole mall went dark because we tripped the power out at the street because the inrush power of everything activating. But no one had ever done that.
Attention, yeah.
It was commissioned and tested in pieces. It was done in fragments and phases, and no one had ever taken all the pieces and put them together to see what happens. So to your point of integrated testing, people need to get a copy of an FPA 3 and 4 and be familiar with, if you're not going to do it, know your role. And if you're bidding jobs, ask that question, because I've seen people come out and they don't realize they signed a contract that bound them to integrated testing, and they thought it was going to be their normal annual, or normal acceptance 2-hour hydro. We're going to flow the zones. We're going to cycle valves. Everything's going to be pretty. The data plate's going to be there. I'm going to get my approval. No, you had to be there for all the testing to trip everything one at a time and let the whole system run through its sequence. Then they clear it. I've seen people get beat on those, and
for sure,
they eat a lot of time, but they also protect your tail.
So as before we wrap this thing up, is there anything that you would like our listeners to know, or any words of wisdom maybe?
From me?
From you, of course.
I mean, I think the one bit of advice that I would have for people is just learn. Don't stop learning. If you get to a point where you feel like you know everything, just retire.
I think there's 370 something other standards that might affect your life, right?
Listen, I love learning stuff. When I run into people, and I'll admit, when I came in, I was a cocky little cuss. Like I was definitely. I mean, I'm
you
sure
did say you're an alarm guy, though, right?
Can imagine, yeah. But I thought I knew everything, and the more I drilled down, I was hungry for knowledge. We have more access to more information. You can go on YouTube and you can learn how to rebuild pumps, pack pumps, and find video. There's stuff that I've been stuck on that I'll go through and I'll figure out how people work through and connect the dots out there. But I think solving puzzles and coming up with permanent solutions is fun. You should always be learning stuff. Every day you're at work, every day you're out there, you should be absorbing stuff. And just steer clear of the people that know everything. Just have integrity, do your job right, and remember, in the end, it's about life safety. That's what we do.
Well, I don't know what your experience has been, but the more I've learned, the more I've realized that I know
nothing.
But what a great comment that is, because you do start in that curve where you think you know everything because the world you're exposed to is so small. And as you learn more, you get exposed to a bigger pond, and then suddenly you're dropped in the middle of the ocean. You're like, I just realized I don't know anything.
That's where the drones are coming from.
Or you
that's right, in the middle of the ocean.
Or you go do a lot more learning, and you're just like, I did that wrong.
But to your point, too, you don't need to be an expert in everything. And I often will talk to people who say you're a fire protection engineer, and I'll ask what they do. And they're like, well, I'm a fire protection engineer. I'm like, I know, so am I. I'm asking, like, we're not unlike doctors, right? If you've got a tumor in your brain, you're not going to go to a guy who works on feet. Right? If you've got chest pain, you're not going to go to someone who does hair transplants or works on teeth. We've got specialists that work on systems. Expand your deck. Get to these association meetings. If you're not involved in your regional chapter for AFC, go out there and make friends and get phone numbers. You don't need to know everything. You just need to know who to call. Listen, I know just a little bit about the seismic stuff, but if I end up in weird stuff, I've got Vicky's cell.
For sure.
I'm going to go back to that.
She's a Google message away.
But I mean, I will text anyone here. I will text with Bob. I'll call John. I mean, the resources are here. I think you can do it through the website now. You can submit questions if you're stuck. But
tech review.
I mean, meet other fitters. Learn. This is a real small world. You get to a certain level in this business moving up, and everyone knows everybody. And if they don't, you're only 1 degree away. Right. I mean, I'll tell you a fun story. You know Jack Poole?
Yeah.
You know Jack Medovich. So I knew both of them independently. And I had known them for a while. And we were somewhere, and I forget which conference we were at, but I was sitting with one of them, and we started talking. And I said, well, I'm looking for so-and-so. And he goes, you know Jack? And I forget which one I was with, so I don't want to get names. But they were apparently roommates in college. And there was I had no idea they had known each other. I mean, I knew them independently, both amazing people, great integrity, staples in the business. But that was eye-opening for me of everybody in this business who's worth knowing usually knows each other or isn't very far away. You'll find, even if I don't like someone, I don't talk trash about anyone. Mm-hmm. It's too small a world up here.
For sure.
And the reality is, I think even people who may come across as arrogant and difficult, their heart's in the right spot. People who are in this business that are passionate, that are really confident, that will argue over things, that's not coming from a place, well, sometimes it's ego, but it's not coming from a bad place where they just want to beat someone down. There's a lot of pride in this business. And I don't understand how when you're working on life safety systems, being proud in what you do could possibly be a fault.
Right. Well, Chris, we really appreciate you coming on, and look forward to future conversations for sure.
Absolutely. You guys are awesome. Thanks for doing this. This is huge. I'm looking forward to seeing this blow up huge.
No problem. And if you're out there listening, remember we're on Spotify, we are on Apple Podcasts, we're on Amazon Music, as well as Podcast Addict. Appreciate it for those Android users. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Wait, you still use Apple? I used to like you.
No. I wish I'd known that at the beginning of this.
I took the training wheels off my phone a long time ago.
Catch you later. This has been the K Factor Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share wherever you tune in to podcasts. Or head over to our website for more. Reach out to us anytime at technical@firesprinkler.org. Stay safe and always learn as we keep the fire protection conversation going.